welcoming back to the show Congressman Byron Donalds. He is representing Florida's 19th Congressional District at Rep. Donalds Press on Twitter. So great to have you back, sir.
It's good to be back. How are you, Stacy?
You know, I'm doing pretty well. Lots of things going on with the young adult kids. But mainly, I've been watching your moves as you've been working through the huge speaker fight and then the second speaker fight, which was like part 2. And now here we are post, and there's a lot going on in D.C. What updates can you give to us, sir?
I mean, well, look, right now, the major issue is how are we going to fund the government? That really hasn't gone away. And then also a big one is how are we going to go through the process of dealing with this supplemental that the White House is requesting. I mean, they want I think it's about $110 billion to continue what's going on in Ukraine and deal with Israel, deal with some humanitarian aid around the world, etc. But my message to the White House and the message of a lot of Republicans, including the Speaker, has been very clear. Secure the border. Like, if you want $100 billion for all this stuff, you got to secure our southern border, period. Like, there's no discussion after that until that occurs. And so that's kind of an update of where we are right now.
So I really appreciate you bringing that in, and this is one of the reasons why it's a joy and a pleasure to cover you in Congress as opposed to some of our other members who've been there longer, because you have an effectiveness. I caught a clip of you. You were actually in the halls. You know, a reporter caught up to you and started talking about this very issue you raised, the supplemental funding package, and you said, actually, there's no more money in the House for Ukraine. And I've done a little bit of research since watching that clip of you. And Congressman, I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I'm wondering why we don't have more people in the People's House where the purse strings are controlled who have looked at this issue. 400,000 plus Ukrainians dead. They're now conscripting men in the 50 and over age range. So they're hollowing out their male population to continue to fight a war that, honestly, for 80% of their country, they could just get at the table with Putin and have an agreement where they cede the 20% they've lost and make a negotiation for the port and save more lives. When do we see more people come around to your message that there is no more money in our pocketbooks for Ukraine?
Well, I mean, for a couple of things. One, I think we got to be clear. I mean, if the Ukrainians decide to defend their sovereignty, who am I to stand in their way and make that push? So however they choose to do that, they have to fight that war. You know, that was the decision that America would have to make if we were facing the same situation. And it's unfortunate that they're in that space. Number two, the reason there is a Ukrainian invasion is because of the weakness of Joe Biden. His dereliction of duty in Afghanistan, the fact that the Russians were amassing troops on the Ukrainian border for 6 months and Joe Biden did nothing about it, is why we're having this issue at all. Number three, in my view, there is going to have to be a negotiated settlement of what the ceasefire is going to be, and that needs to happen immediately. I will notice that there's been more pressure on the Israelis to have a ceasefire than on the Russians. Don't you find that interesting?
I do.
There's been far more pressure on the Israelis to have a ceasefire than on the Russians.
It feels hypocritical to me that we have to, after what we saw in Israel on October 7th, that we have to even entertain these ideas. And I agree with you about the sovereign status of Ukraine. They could continue to fight, but as their primary funder, we're giving them most money. Yeah. I feel like it's incumbent upon us to address the issue that you also raised there, and that's the border. So I've seen a few things about the continued funding of our government, and we have a little stopgap measure in place to get us through the holidays. But when we return, will we see the Republican House say to the Democrats that the funds that are going to these NGOs that are using these charter buses to move migrants and illegal aliens from the Northern Triangle all the way up to our southern border, that we'll see the defunding of that, the defunding of the flights once they get into the country illegally, they're flown wherever they'd like to go. Will we see that?
Yeah, I believe so. And that's also part of H.R. 2, which the Senate is saying can never pass. It's unworkable. That's not true. It makes them have to do something they don't want to do. And I mean, look, that's always the hardest thing to do in human nature. It's twice as hard in politics. But the leverage the House has is when it comes to spending money. And so whether it's Ukraine or whether it's the Department of Energy or the Department of Education or any one of these agencies, the power of the House is the power of the purse. The policies that have been laid out by this administration have been disastrous for the country. And my view is Republicans, when we get to this next deadline of January 19th, we shouldn't continue to fund any of it. If there's not going to be serious changes that we can agree to, then no. Why am I giving you money? People might say, oh, but the government will shut down. And my response will be, okay, but you're funding a government that's working against you. Why would you do that? That makes no sense. And so my hope is that we do hold firm on all those things, including these NGOs, which in the oversight committee is one of the things I'm pushing for, that we begin to investigate and open up. These NGOs have been a disaster, and they've been working against the sanctity of our southern border.
They have, and the disastrous nature of what they're doing is that we literally have the cartels operating within our border, and we have 350,000 migrant children who we really don't have a good handle on where they are. And then there's just the overwhelming toll. Airports are now being used as places for them to sleep. You have police stations being taken over, and then you have the actual the mayors are sending these people once they've been delivered from Texas by Governor Abbott. Then these are and mayors are then shipping them elsewhere. We're expecting an influx of illegal aliens in the St. Louis metro because our city mayor thinks it's, she's best friends, I guess she's besties with the new mayor in Chicago, and wants to take some of the Venezuelans off of his hands without a vote, without any kind of an acknowledgement of what citizens want. So we have to do something about it, and we can't wait until we have a Republican president to do it, because the numbers are outrageous. It's reported that there are over 7 million additional people here.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct in all that, Stacy, which is why House Republicans, we have to hold the line and we have to be serious about it. My rhetoric, my messaging on this is going to be consistent. There's no more money here in the House unless our border is secured. That's it. That's it. And I think that in this town, you have to be willing to just say no. And only when you say no does this town start moving. Because at the end of the day, what Washington really wants to do is spend the people's money. That's what they want to do. They're addicted to it. They don't know how to stop it. They want to do that. So you have to have the strength to tell them, no, if you're going to spend the people's money, you're going to do it this way.
So the way that we want to see that happen, obviously you've outlined that. We'll be looking forward to it. I wanted to, as we're finishing and rounding out, we're so grateful for your time tonight, Congressman. I wanted to turn to the issue of Israel. I know a lot of Americans are reeling from the open displays of anti-Semitism that are rife across the country. They emanate from the college campuses, and they're now filling up the streets of New York and other major cities. And as congressional members, I've seen a real split on the Democrat side. They have some people who have common sense, and then they have what I have called the Hamas caucus, people who will literally say, but Israel, anytime you bring up the rapes, the murders, the beheadings, baking human babies alive in ovens, things that we never thought we'd see in this decade. And in my lifetime, I never thought I would see it. Yet here we are. Where are you coming down on the Democrats and their refusal to condemn the mass rapes that occurred on October 7th?
I think it's ridiculous. I think it's insane, really. You have a Democrat Party that has been lecturing America, and frankly Republicans as well, about how they stand for women. That is a lie, because the women who were raped on October 7th, they're not saying anything about them. The National Organization of Women is not saying anything about those women. Democrat women are not standing up for those women. They're not demanding justice to be brought by removing Hamas from the face of the earth for the atrocities that they committed. They're not doing any of that. They're trying to both sidesism this thing. Israel did not invade Gaza. Gaza and Hamas invaded Israel. That's what happened. And there has to be a price to pay for it. For people in the White House, the Democrats on Capitol Hill who are saying, oh, we have to continue to ceasefire because now we must have peace. If you always can only see peace after you got beat up, there is no peace. You have to eliminate your enemy in this instance, and Hamas must go. If that is not the position that Democrats have, then that is why they are weak. That is why they are feckless, and that is why the world is less safe today than it was when Donald Trump was president of the United States. That's it.
And we've seen the protests, and so I'm wondering where you come down on there's a big free speech fight that has occurred on the right side of the aisle about whether or not college campuses should, because some of the people who are protesting and saying the most crazy things, calling for intifadas and things like that, they're on student visas. And if they were to actually be cited for what they're doing, they'd lose their student visas and be sent back to the Middle East. And I feel like that's where they belong if they have those views. But what do you think about the free speech issue that's cropping up here?
I mean, look, if you're here on a visa, you're not a citizen of our country. You were invited into our country. And this is very key. I am a free speech absolutist. I do believe in free speech. I think people should say what they want to say, no matter how detestable and disgusting and crazy that it is. However, you're a guest in our country. That's what visas are for. So if you're cited for that, yeah, you got to go home, because studying in universities in our country is a privilege. It is not a right. You're not owed it to study in America. America gives you the opportunity and the privilege to come here, and we invite you in. That's my stance. I find the other thing that's terrible, and I know on Capitol Hill we're already starting to investigate this, is how much money is coming in from overseas that has been moving our universities more and more to the left. That has to be fully investigated, because our institutions of higher learning cannot continue to be hotbeds for a mindset that undermines America. Again, what are we paying for? That just makes no sense, and we got to stop doing that to ourselves.
And I so agree with you there, and I'm looking forward to seeing more. I want to wish your family Merry Christmas, the beautiful children, the lovely wife, and yourself, sir. Thank you for coming on and for all that you're doing for us in Congress. We really appreciate your hard work and effort, and especially your fealty to the Constitution. We need more like you in that body.
Listen, thanks so much, Stacy. It was great being on with you. Take it easy.
All right, take it easy. And Merry Christmas to you. All right, we'll be back with more Stacy on the Right after this. Keep it here.